We need it in force. I can email you.
Good, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 20th, 2025, and this is the City of Conneaut Heights City Council work session. My name is Mike Quickers and I'm the mayor of Conneaut Heights. Our first item on our agenda today is going to be a review of our business meeting for this evening. We will start, like always, with doing a pledge of allegiance. I'm going to ask Councilmember Holton if he would lead that charge. Tonight, we have our city council committee reports that will follow directly after the pledge. And then we'll have a citizen comment period. Item 5 for this evening, we have 2 separate public hearings, both pertaining to annexations. Item 5.1 is a public hearing on the proposed annexation of the Creek Road West annexation area. And then 5.2 is the public hearing on the proposed annexation of the Water Vista Way annexation area. Mike and or Suzanne, anything you want to add about this item? This public hearing?
I have informed citizens in the area. I expect that some will come in support. I haven't heard any opposition. They'll just come to express gratitude, I hope.
Awesome.
Just real quick, as an explanation, Creek Road West, we can approve tonight because it's a petition process. Water Vista Way still has a 3-week. We have to hold this open for 3 weeks, so.
Okay.
I just note on the one for action tonight, we've established a temporary zoning that most closely matches the current county zoning, and then we'll start the formal rezone process once the annexation is formal
Okay.
to go in and
What
make
is the
sure.
current zoning?
It's a couple different zones, just a mix of single family residential zones.
Okay. Different from lot sizes. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So we'll do both of those public hearings. We also have 2 quarterly reports from our fire and police department. So I think Chief Pilgrim will be online. Then we'll have our police department reports from Chief Russo and Andy. And then we have 4 separate action items for tonight. We'll start with item 7.1. Consideration of ordinance 440 approving the Creek Road West annexation and imposing temporary zoning regulations that we just talked about.
Can I actually add something?
Yes.
There is a water issue with this. They are in the Jordan Conservancy District right now. And I understand that that's gonna change. I had a good discussion with one of the residents, and basically I said, if you're annexed into Cotwood Heights and it turns out Sandy Water takes over that area, you would be paying a non-resident rate. If you're annexed into Cottonwood Heights and Salt Lake Public Utilities takes over that area, you would be paying non-resident rates. Regardless, they're paying non-resident rates. So if that does come up, as a discussion item, because we don't go back and forth through the public hearing, the council to be aware that regardless, they're going to be paying non-resident rates based on Jordan. They just want to get out of the retail water business.
Right.
So they'll be handing it off to someone. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, item 7.2, consideration of resolution 2025-36, appointing a member of the Health and the Heights Advisory Committee. Jared, you want to talk about Diane?
Yeah, Diane Foster Burke, she has been in the nursing field for several years, has a lot of experience, especially she was a professor at Westminster for specifically community nursing, the community in the community. So Sandra and I sat down with her, had a good talk with her, and seems like a good fit for the committee. I think we still have a few open vacancies, not too many, but yeah, so.
Perfect. Any questions, comments? Item 7.3, consideration of resolution 2025-37, approving a performance contract and an addendum for the 2025 holiday show. Jared?
And this is the same group that came last December, so we're just starting their contract early so we can lock them in. Same setup as last time for the show. So I don't think there's anything new with this, it's just a new contract for this year.
Okay. And the last item, 7.4, consideration of resolution 2025-38, approving and ratifying a second amended interlocal agreement with the city CDRA for the Canyon Center project area. Mike, anything you want to add from that?
This is a maybe more a technicality than anything. The city already approved all of the amended plans and budgets and everything needed. For reporting purposes, they want a document between the city and the agency, which is also you with a different hat on. That says interlocal agreement, and because it doesn't formally say that, we thought it'd be better to just adopt one more document that says interlocal agreement.
Don't change anything.
No substantive changes to any of the budgets or plans or anything.
Questions or comments from the council? Okay. And then we'll approve our consent calendar, which is the meetings from our May 6th work session and business meeting. Okay, we'll move on to reports, and we'll move on to item 3A, which is Public Health Advisory Committee report. We've got Chelsea Voss here with Sandra, and so we'll invite both of you up right now, and excited to hear about some of the progress with this great committee.
Chelsea, do you want to sit here?
I got you.
Okay.
Oh, nope, I'm moving.
nobody's in the-
Everyone's sitting up
Matt,
chair.
there's a chair right here. I mean,
That was
just
very,
sit
that was
here.
good.
There's a spot right here.
I don't want to split them, okay.
She'll want to see the slides, so.
Oh, did that not?
You have to join Zoom and then share through that.
Oh. Okay. I'm not. Unless it's easier for you to share. Okay. Okay. I don't know. Oh. Okay, so are you?
While Sandra's getting that pulled up, I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Chelsea Voss. I am the chair of the Health in the Heights Committee. My background is I've been a nurse for about 10 years and I've been working in population health for a lot of that. I have been the chair for maybe 2 months now. So I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to give you guys an update on some of the things that we've been doing on the committee. And we're happy to have Sandra. She's been amazing.
Thank you.
Just coordinating.
Sorry, didn't know about the team thing, so I apologize for the delay. Oh, you're fine. I just want to make sure I shouldn't like be seeing it or something. Just. Oh, okay. Yeah, business? Not yet. Okay, here it goes. It's just delayed.
Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
thanks for your patience.
Okay, you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay, so just as a reminder for Health in the Heights, we are using the Communities That Care framework. So this is broken into 5 separate phases. We just graduated from phase 1, and that included the key leader orientation, creating a board. We're right now in progress of phase 2, and we'll talk a little bit about what that entails. Mostly it's just getting organized and getting our coalition up and going. And then phase 3, we're hoping to start in the fall. So we'll be going off of it's mostly gathered around some of the data that we're collecting and figuring out what our strategies are for the coalition. We'll be using the SHARP survey, which has been completed, and we'll be getting that data in the fall. So hopefully we will have everything from phase 2 completed. So once we get that information, we can start phase 3 in the fall. Phase 2, what phase 2 entails is the community board orientation. So this actually is a little bit more than just an hour orientation. This is, I think it's about 16 hours that each of our board members will go through. We'll create a vision statement. We'll be getting a logo as well, which we'll talk about, and selecting different work groups for our coalition as well. We also have created an executive committee. So we've got myself as the chair. We also selected a vice chair and a secretary. And then we'll create some bylaws and we'll be rolling on to phase 3. A recap of key leader orientation. This was a big thing that we had to complete within phase 1. So we did that on April 30th, which many of you were a part of. We had 16 attendees. We had the mayor that joined us. We had the former mayor as well. Many of our city council members were there. So thank you guys for joining. We had the school board admin. We had a Brighton high school football coach. Somebody from the PTA. We had a physician and also a legislative advocate that was there. We had a lot of engagement. It was pretty fun to be in that room to see what kind of engagement we have from leaders within our community and what kind of buy-in we can get from them. One thing that we did in key leader orientation was we talked about concerns and hopes for our youth. It looks like there's fewer hopes, but there are some great hopes that we have. A lot of these concerns are surrounding substance abuse and bullying and things that we're hoping to tackle as a coalition. Another thing that we did was on April 26th, we did a drug take back day. In the drug take back day, we were able to gather 76 pounds of drugs, which is pretty incredible because I've talked to other people from the health department and they said that the most that they've seen is around 40. And one important thing to note was these are drugs that are not going to be misused or abused. These are drugs that aren't going to go into our water system. So this is pretty incredible that we got this many pounds of drugs. Many people, there was a couple people, elder citizens within the community that said that these were drugs that they have had just sitting around their house for decades.
Yeah, 20 years, literally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people didn't know that we had a drug take back box that they could come and just put their drugs in anytime during business hours. So this was a great way that we could really advertise that that is something that our community offers. We had around 38 community members that was there. We had a band, which made it really fun. We also involved the youth as well. So we had 4 youth city council members that were there help promoting the event. We had some members from the Cottonwood Heights Police Department, also a member of the National Guard that was there. And we were able to distribute 7 narcotics as well. So it's pretty incredible that we could do that. Here's just some photos. I thought it was fun to show some. This last week, we were able to do a community health fair at Canyon View Elementary. Suzanne was there as well. And we were promoting really 3 different events within our community, or 3 different campaigns. The first one was the QPR training that the coalition is offering for the community. We'll talk a little bit more about that, I believe, in the next slide. The other 2 things were 2 different campaigns. One is Parents Empowered. So this is underage drinking media that really promotes parents to helping prevent underage, really anybody underage, under 25 from using alcohol. And Real Day is, I think many of you have heard about Real Day. So this is helping children and youth and families get off social media, get off screens for one day out of every month. So it's the first day of every month to go and do something real with your friends and family.
And thanks to Sean for introducing us to that. So.
Yes,
So what's an example of a real thing?
Like getting together to go for a hike, or, you know, doing something outside with their friends, or going to a movie together, just something off of social media. So it starts June 1st, and it's the first of every month. And they have it slated to June through October. Hopefully people will go beyond that. But I think some of the parents are excited as well. I talked to with the PTA president at Canyon View, who's one of our key leaders, and she said, I think this is great for adults to take part in too. And so they're trying to, you know, start messaging it a bit in the elementary schools, and then we're hoping to continue it in the fall when they come back. So,
It was introduced to us at ULCT. Sean and I were in
yeah,
a seminar, and it was the Harriman mayor, can't think his name.
Lauren Palmer.
Oh, who was just so excited about, he'd taken a real day with his child, and he says they still talk about it. Put away the screens, they went hiking, they went to the movie, they went, you know, just spent the day together.
that's fun.
I'm still waiting to hear back from Canyons so we can have contacts at all of our elementary schools within the city and the junior high school. So they'll be getting back to me on, and I'll be connecting in with Sandra to get that done.
That's why I'm particularly excited about the bike buses that are going on, because children every Friday, at least at Butler Elementary, are riding their bikes. And I think these kind of real, what apparently is a superlative these days, which was an everyday occurrence for most of us growing up in our formative years. So that's a real. Yeah, that's.
So this event was put on with, I think it was for the Girls on the Run. So we had a lot of participants. I was surprised at how many we had come to our booth, and it seemed like the community was very excited about the coalition. This last month we did a QPR training, which is question, refer, or persuade, refer, which is a suicide prevention training for our coalition. So we had 18 members attend. And we will be doing a community training on June 11th. I put a QR code on the screen or on the slides for anybody that would like to sign up. We still have a lot of spots available, so anybody that would like to join that, I think it's the more people we can have from our community trained in this, the better. I took the training myself and I thought it was really great.
and it's
Do you all work with the high school does the Hope Squad still exist over
the
at
Hope
Brighton?
Squad does exist.
Do you guys work with that? at all?
We do a bit through Susan Edwards.
Okay,
But yeah, we're hoping to do more with them and also involve Mary Ann, who's part of the youth council. So, yeah,
awesome.
they do still do that, yeah. So, and this will be an hour and a half. So it's 6:30 to 8:30, just in the community room. And yeah, like Chelsea said, our coalition went through it. I thought it was a really powerful training. I learned so much just about, you know, language to use and not to use. And so, you know, it's something that our community and many communities struggle with. And so we're hoping to get at least 30 people. That's the max that we can take for this. I think 7 people are currently signed up for it. So
It's what you need to know before you need to know, and especially the referral part, because you could compassionately talk to someone who would agree to stay safe with you, but okay, now what?
yeah,
There's a lot of resources that I wasn't aware of, so it's sharing resources too, which is pretty great. Depending on the response that we get from this, we would like to do this on a regular basis. So whether that be quarterly or twice a year, we'd like to offer this to our citizens more often. Butlerville Days, we will have a tabling booth there just to create more awareness of our coalition. One fun thing that we will be doing for our table is we will have a logo contest. So our coalition does not yet have a logo. So we thought it would be a fun idea to involve the youth in this, because that's part of what our coalition is about, is involving the youth. we already have a submission from a graphic design student. And so these are the kind of students that we're hoping to involve with creating a logo for our coalition.
Yeah, and like it says, their social development strategy is something we focus on. It's really just about giving youth opportunities and skills to create, and giving them recognition that then creates bonding, and then, it helps them have neighborhood connection and feel bonded to their community. And so we thought this was a great way to offer, a chance for them to get involved. And then, yeah, we'll show all of the entries at Butlerville Days and have the community vote on which logo, so.
So we are currently in the process of getting our Healthy Utah designation. So we've chosen our strategies, and we've actually completed all of the strategies to get to finish our application in the
Yes.
fall. I think that's due September 1st.
It's due our August
August
1st.
1st, and then we will be
Recognized
recognized in the fall. So what this involves is it recognizes communities across Utah that do a great job at implementing evidence-based strategies to improve community health. So there are a couple different application requirements. So we have to review the Healthy Utah dashboard, and I'll just show you an example of what that looks like. And we have to select 6 strategies that improve the health of our citizens that we have accomplished. So there's 3 different categories that we choose, 2 strategies from each category. So there's active living, access to healthy food, and mental health. We have to reapply every 3 years, so we'll have to reapply again in 2028. This is what the Healthy Utah dashboard looks like, or the Healthy Places Index. So it's showing that Cottonwood Heights is actually in the 90th percentile, which is pretty great, but I still think we have a lot of opportunity to improve different areas within our community. And then also, if you look at some other cities that border our city, that we can use some of our learnings maybe to help our neighbors. It breaks it down by different policy action areas. So for this example, I chose the bike lane access because that's something I'm very passionate about. And I also I am a member of the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee too. So I shared this with them, showing that we are in the 85th percentile for bike lane access. But what this is actually looking at is the total miles of bike lanes within our city. We have a lot of miles within our city, but there's some opportunities to improve some of those to make them safer for the kids within our community and also the residents of our community. These were the strategies that we chose for our 2025 application. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we have done a lot of these things. Some of them, I think it would just be good to promote within our city as well, just to make sure that everybody is aware of the resources that we have. One thing that I learned was that the library does a seed exchange every year and also gardening classes. So that's something that I took that I was a part of this year, but I just don't think that maybe a lot of citizens are aware of this. So it's something that maybe we can advertise a little bit more, just to show things that we have available already. These were some ideas for future applications. So we're already looking forward to our 2028 application and looking for strategies that we can improve as a coalition, and then also partnering and collaborating with the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee. So this is just a quote that I really liked by Margaret Mead. So it says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." So I've been really impressed with our city council and how engaged you guys have been in our coalition, also to Mr. Mayor as well. So we're excited about the things that we've done in the short time that we've been a coalition. Really, we've been active and going for less than 6 months, and we've done a lot so far. And I really think that the work that we're doing can save lives and can improve the lives of all of the citizens within our community. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. That was awesome. Any other questions from the council before Chelsea and Sandra off the hot?
Thanks for volunteering your time, putting all that work in.
Yeah.
I know we really, really appreciate what you're doing,
Still
and
more.
we're aware of it, and we want to stay involved and promote it. And so we're excited. You'll have to I think they do that acknowledgement at a league meeting.
They do.
And we hope that you will come and be a part of that. So,
Yeah.
Loved it.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
guys.
Appreciate it. Okay, the next item on our agenda is item B, which is labeled a Fort Union traffic discussion. And so we're actually gonna have Councilmember Sean Newell lead us in this discussion. So Sean, will turn some time to you.
I don't know if I'll leave, but I'll throw the fuel on the fire.
Pick it on.
One of the reasons I wanted to have this discussion, we've had this in the past, talking about the speed on Fort Union, how to look at opportunities to mitigate that speed, especially with the Hillside project coming on board. So I've been doing a little learning, thanks to the brilliance that we have on staff to help me out a little bit. Right now, we have pretty good compliance on Fort Union Boulevard as far as the speed goes. And we have talked before about reducing that speed down to 35 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour. The impact of that would not be significant enough for us to see a huge amount of change. What we can look at now is the future of Fort Union Boulevard as it moves closer to the Hillside project. Some of the information that we need will come about when we have someone selected as a developer to help us to understand the flow of traffic, what we need to make sure that we're not harming the project in any way. What we want to do is try to enhance opportunities for commerce and visitors to be a part of that. So I wanted to have just a quick explanation. I don't know if it'll be Matt or
Mike, did you want to add to it or Matt?
to bring up just some of the information, Matt, about where we are on traffic, the 85 percentile, what that is, that measurement is, and the impact of, or the lack or no impact on increasing or decreasing the speed there.
Just gonna kind of bring forward, if you'll recall, I was asked to throw some things together, last week on this, so forgive me if I'm feeling a little off kilter on this one, because I haven't had a chance to do deep dive into it, but this is a study, if you'll recall, we did last year in 2024, at the beginning of the year. So, a year and a half or so old, where we were asked by council to look at speed reductions on Fort Union and look at how things were operating. So one of the things we did was we, under council's direction, we initiated a speed study as well as a traffic count along Fort Union. The report itself goes through and lays out some things that were happening, and we brought this report back to council. And I don't think it was a big surprise to a lot of us who utilize that road. But breaking it out, I'll go real quick through. This is just the data, and then we can dive into, I guess, philosophy if you want, or some ideas. But the segments were broken down into 5 different segments that we can analyze, and you can see from how the volume decreases the further east you go, which makes a lot of sense, because the further east you get, you run into the neighborhoods. You don't have the businesses draw from other cities. These are folks that are going home. So it goes anywhere from 24,000 down to roughly 10,000 based on the segments. And from 23 to 30th East, you can see that gets deeper into the neighborhoods. And we can, let me pull this up.
So it didn't go all the way to Wasatch Boulevard SR 190. It strictly went to 3,000 East.
Hang on, that was, yeah, I think we went to 30th East. Yeah, so the segment 5 went to 30th East. We were asked to look at that stretch of road through there. The volumes in that and the speed alteration, I don't know if it's going to change a whole lot between 30th and Fort Union based on the makeup of the neighborhood and the area. I can't say that definitively without the study, but that would be what I would expect to see happen. So,
What time of year was this, the?
November, December, in those timeframes.
By ski season yet?
No, speeds would have dropped drastically in some cases on the speed.
I was looking at volume.
Yeah, volume, now that would have changed. Queue times and that, obviously those would have changed. But this particular study was really focused on speeds, because we were at this time, in January, last year, 2023 into 2024, we were focused on the speed limit on Fort Union, so that's where this came from. And then not belaboring the point on the volumes and the speeds themselves, there were also crash studies, totals, all crashes, severe crashes, speed-related crashes, those things. And that went from 2019 at that time to 2023. And that was data that was pulled. I think we pulled some from the state as well as our police department.
Why it's not measured in fatalities versus severe injury?
We were just pulling data on that. This wasn't a crash study. We were just looking at speeds, and that was one of the things I just asked to pull in volumes, vehicle types, and some crash data. I'm sure we can ask the police and they can pull those up and have them to you if we're looking at that. But so the dates, November 27th through December 1st. So it was about a week long time. We made sure there was no snow at that time and things were, traffic was moving at a normal speed. And then you break out the cars and the types of vehicles, and then we get to the speeds, which what the study was about. You have on here the 85th percentile and is being discussed. So, and it's interesting to me, from 13 to 17, you have about a 42 mile an hour 85th percentile, and that number really increases. You get in between Highland Drive and 2300 East, where your businesses really are focused. That drops down to about 40, but once you pass 23, and like I said, you're going up into the neighborhoods, the speed, the 85th percentile does increase
It's
to
interesting,
45.
fewer cars.
Fewer cars, higher speeds.
Higher speed.
Yeah. So
Also fewer ins and outs because there aren't as many businesses.
yes,
so
yeah. It's a matter of the
expect people to
context.
feel comfortable
You
with
somewhat
this.
expect this to happen. I'm not saying it's not, and I'm not shocked by the numbers. You would expect that to happen based on the geographic context and the business context of what's going on in there. So you would expect that to happen. But when you hit the 45 now, prior AASHTO would say once you pass 45, not 45, once you pass, say, 5 miles an hour over the speed limit in your 85th, you start to do things. Either one, you change the speed limit to the 85th, which that was an old way of thinking, an old way of viewing it. I'm not advocating it. I'm just saying that's what it was. Now, AASHTO, when they look at it, they take into context sensitive solutions, i.e. the neighborhoods around, what kind of businesses are there. You don't necessarily raise the speed limit to meet it. You can leave the speed limit as is, or you put traffic calming into the road to try to reduce that speed to where you're comfortable. Okay. Without changing anything, studies and experience have shown raising or lowering the speed limit on a road, if you don't change anything other than a sign, you don't necessarily change any kind of behavior on driving, because the 85th is a measure of comfort for a driver. You will have many people out there who are law abiders, who will say it's 25, I'm going to do 25. You'll have 85% who are comfortable and they will drive the comfort. So these things, this is what you're looking at. So in a nutshell, this was the data that we had at the time. We discussed it as you discussed it as a council, and it was decided at that time not to change the speed limit on Fort Union. And that's where it was left. So does that?
Perfect, that's great background.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what my concern is when we look at the 85th percentile, we have 45 miles an hour. In reality, you've got those anomalies that are well over that 45 miles per hour. Without traffic calming, changes to the road, I agree that the changing in habit is gonna be really minimal. Unless we do some other things to bring attention to it. I will bring up the sample of 70th South in West Jordan. There's a long stretch of road, very long, 35 miles an hour. You don't see many people going over that 35 miles an hour on that road. And
From what, west to west? Did you say?
from Redwood Road down to the Baker Highway. That stretch all
Oh,
of 70th South.
Okay.
And I didn't even include the other, it's really busy above that, but that would be similar to Fort Union when we look at the amount of traffic. It's a 2-lane road. Which in the mornings, of course, everybody complains about that going east. And then in the evening going south, but during the regular daytime hours, when it's not the commuter traffic, they have very few violations, and part of it is because of what their, so you chief would know this, their police force, they sit at that church at about 2700 west, I think it is. And everybody knows they're there, even when they're not there, everybody knows they're there. Which has changed habits on that road for a number of the residents. Everybody I talk to that lives out there says, oh, we know better. I don't know if we can do something, we don't have to go to that extreme, but even if we pay a cardboard police car or something, but I don't know if we can go, what we can do to slow down these speeds. And it concerns me too, that people are speeding up on their way home. Like they've got something on the crock pot that needs to be taken off before a certain period of time. That is concerning because that's where we're starting to see the young people walking across the street and being mobile. And if we're talking about bringing more people in to ride their bikes and walk our roads, we need to be concerned about that speed in those areas where it is mostly
So
residential.
according to that data, 23rd to 27th is the biggest problem.
Exactly. We headed up to 30th. all the
And
way to
30th, really, yeah,
Yeah.
23rd to 30th.
So I noticed that there's, I mean, westbound, there's the downgrade, which causes the
Yeah.
speeds to go up. When you have,
I think people
when
are
you have,
conscious of that.
yeah, well, when you have a commercial, like when town center is there, do you think there'll be the same phenomenon that happens between Highland and 2300 where the speeds are slower because there's more in and outs?
That's what I did hope for.
Okay,
And that's why I wanted to take a look at this again. I don't want to make a change that will be irrelevant. When all of a sudden, something based on what we do, our project, will create some of that change, as well as the innovations to the intersection.
Yeah.
You know,
So the traffic study, I think it hasn't been emailed out yet, right?
I haven't
So-
seen it.
I think we're within a day or two of
Yeah.
sending it out
Yeah.
to the council. And we'll want you to spend a bunch of time on that, because there will be some solutions to slowing traffic at 23rd. So.
Like a median, and what are we talking?
Multiple.
I'll tell us that.
Oh, so they're gonna include that in the report.
Mhm.
Or-
Lanes of travel and.
Yeah.
Well, Fort Union Boulevard has very high access. Very high access. We have elementary schools located on Fort Union Boulevard, parks. We have sidewalks where the sidewalk does not have the park strip, which is in our general plan to say that what we do in Cottonwood Heights to not only beautify, but to make it safer for people that live there is to have a park strip between the sidewalk and the roadway. So on one of our highest volume roadways in our city, Fort Union Boulevard, we don't follow what's in the general plan, which is to separate pedestrians with the park strip. We have sidewalks that often go right to the edge of the roadway. Sadly, we lost one of our citizens who stepped off the curb and was killed on Fort Union Boulevard in the last couple of years. So beyond all the great points that have been brought out to this moment, we need to make a decision in Cottonwood Heights. We've had the opportunity to embrace a program called Vision Zero. This has been adopted by other cities in our country. It has been successful. I just came back from a trip to New Jersey. And I got to hear from the mayor of Hoboken, New Jersey, 57,000 population. when they embraced the tenets of the safe systems approach found in Vision Zero, they have not had a vehicular related fatality in 7 years. We as a community have a chance to say, is human life sacred? Are we going to invest ourselves in traffic measures that are going to have the efficacy to protect the people of our community and those that visit us? And so I would urge my council colleagues to go back to the very elements that we already agreed to a couple of years ago in the Safe Systems for All. It's a federal program, came out of the US Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, and recognize that Fort Union Boulevard has high access. It has high pedestrian use. It has people both walking and rolling. And so it has so many design flaws in it that while we're trying to take a first step here, we need a more comprehensive way of looking at a plan for, again, what I hope, and the reason why I supported the town center and investing in bonding toward that, is to create at least a portion of Fort Union Boulevard that is really walkable, that is safe, that our residents can go and patronize the shops and restaurants. They'll feel like they want to get out of their car and not just drive through there as fast as they can. So, as we think about whether to slow the speed, again, this is a good first step, but I'm very interested in, embracing the tenets that have been put forward again by the US Federal Highway Administration that give us real direction on how to prevent serious injury and fatalities in our future.
I think, this photo is an illustration of that progress taking place. It can't happen overnight. Budget wise, it's not feasible, for a city of our size. But we're taking those incremental steps. But what I wanted this conversation to evoke is just considering other opportunities that aren't gonna cost us an arm and a leg that can be implemented to help us with this process, to help us to move forward a little more expeditiously, not like tomorrow, but in a right strategic way that will help us to get to where we want to be.
Give some ideas of what some of those are.
I don't, that's why I'm throwing it out here on the table. I don't want to get like Salt Lake City where, you got 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. That is not really.
That's in their residential streets.
Exactly, but even on our residential streets, we get complaints all the time about people speeding down the streets, and I've got quite a bit of help from Matt Chip and his team on those issues. But there's got to be something, and I'm looking for the magic.
Well, part of the reason there haven't been any fatalities in Hoboken is because they went to 20 miles per hour as a maximum speed. So
Hoboken, I don't want to minimize your point at all, Councilmember Burrow, because I think I know your focus is awesome, but Hoboken is 1/16 of our size. It's about as urban as you can get. And so what they've done is not comparable to Conway Heights. I love what they've done. I think it's cool. I actually think, and there's reasons it's similar to Carmel. They've done things that have helped, but that is not a comparable to Conway Heights. We need solutions for a suburban city. And, we have some arterials in our city, and we need to find solutions to do what you want, make our roads safer, but we also need solutions that are feasible and anyway.
And that's what I'm looking for, just to throw it out there, have the conversation, get the brain juices flowing so that we can come up with something.
Well, one of the ways that you can accomplish safer streets is with small incremental measures. We don't, to your point, I realize that's been a glaring fact for now the 3.5 years I've served and been focused on this. I understand we don't have the unlimited general funds to put toward this, but there are incredibly inexpensive ways you can use delineators, which, candlesticks. There's many ways to send the signal to motorists to slow down. And those could very inexpensively be implemented in strategic spots along Fort Union Boulevard to help quell the speeds, especially if we do come up with signage that suddenly says it's 35 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour. And I think that it's a matter of political will here, whether we're willing to do small incremental things that aren't incredibly expensive. There's ways to what is called daylight intersections. Intersections are one of the most dangerous places in our city. And by daylighting those intersections, you basically are drawing the motorist's attention to the fact that they're coming into an intersection, they're expected to slow down, follow the rules, and be aware of those who are walking and rolling. So right there with, again, very inexpensive, they're called delineators. You can screw them into the ground, into the asphalt. Somebody runs them over, you replace them, it's $50, $100. I mean, we could have a meeting tomorrow and start some of these things. So
If UDOT uses them, but may I also make a suggestion that all of us reach out to our representatives, because one of the interim committee agenda items is to revisit cameras at intersections, speed cameras, and the gentleman who proposed it actually wanted to do just a pilot study where they would put cameras at intersections and then just send a note to the registered owner of the vehicle, hey, red light really matters. So not in a punitive way to start, but an educational way. I agree with you, those are smaller things. You know, I'm not a UDOT expert, I don't know. So to me, it feels like we go to UDOT and say, hey, could you just cheaply engineer your roads and, you know, get these safety measures? I think they're experts, and I think I would want them to come to us and say, these are the inexpensive ways that you can make an intersection safer, or you might need to overhaul this one completely. So I look forward to the report. I will commit to reading it because we are committed to safety. Just because we don't adopt Vision Zero doesn't mean that we aren't committed to safety. There are safe systems for all. I think it's something that we've all looked at and that we want to see in our cities.
But I will tell you, the cameras can't.
Okay.
Just because I just have this feeling, you know, I jokingly said it before about, you know, that would be great to slow people down, but it creates some other problems for us and, you know, public trust and everything, and as a government entity, if we do things like.
well, and
that. So-
I'm not even interested in capturing the license plate numbers. What I'm interested in is cameras that capture when we have near misses and when we have pedestrians and cyclists who are being struck, but they didn't get seriously hurt, so they get up and no problem and they go on their way. You know, why are we waiting until the next fatality or serious injury? We could be capturing on camera, again, not to identify license plate numbers, but to identify where within our intersections there are motorists turning right. What do you do when you're a motorist? If you're in an intersection, you look over your left shoulder as you turn right, and that's where pedestrians and bicyclists are struck. So if we even could somehow gather data that says, wow, in 1 week, we had 3 near misses and 2 people struck, but they got up and walked away. I mean, there's so many things that could be done.
Don't we currently have cameras at most of our intersections?
For a different purpose.
Yeah, you're.
I know they're-
It's not at every intersection, but we have them strategically
For
placed
what?
for,
Stolen vehicles.
yeah,
It's crime related.
yeah.
And is it possible to use those same cameras, again, not to identify license plate numbers, but to identify, you know, where that we have near misses and pedestrians and cyclists being struck in our, and especially those running red lights. I get calls all the time from constituents who are like, wow, at Highland and Creek and other intersections, cars are zooming through there, you know, is it, you know?
Those devices actually completely opposite of what you're describing. They don't take pictures of the person in the car. They simply gather the plate information. That's all they do, is gather the plate
Oh,
information.
okay, well, that's not what we're looking.
But I won't disagree with you that Fort and Island is dangerous for people running red lights.
I actually really appreciate what you said about public trust. My experience is different, and we've got friends in Australia, I've been to Australia often. And they actually have an increased trust in one another because they feel safe where they are. There's a line there, I totally agree. But I did want to bring it to our council's attention that it is on the interim agenda. For us to, and you feel strongly one way, or if we can at least engage in that conversation because it affects us. we decide to do.
And I'm more than willing to have that conversation.
Well, good. Thank you, Councilmember Newell. I think that was productive. Appreciate that. And we'll expect that report this week, right, Matt?
Yes, sir.
We got it, ready to go.
I can send it out.
Item 3C is labeled an SR 210 Canyon traffic discussion. So we know that the discouragement that we felt this past year. And so I'm going to turn some time to Councilmember Burrell to start us into that discussion. So Councilmember Burrell.
Okay, thank you. So on SR 210, which we all refer to as Wasatch Boulevard, and I'm precisely talking though about SR 210 in essence from the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon south to the end of our boundary in Cottonwood Heights. In a nutshell, in previous winters, the traffic officers within our CHPD had the ability to have a roving officer on snow mornings within, especially within the area from Bengal Boulevard south to, let's say, Alpine Way. There's streets that emanate to the west as well as the many streets that emanate to the east. And often on these snow mornings, which could either be in conjunction with heavy snowfall and or avalanche closure of Little Cottonwood Canyon, the cars obviously become absolutely blocked. And so we're not, I think the residents who have asked me to represent them today, and I hope that everybody has read through the appendice that I put together. This is not about, everybody that lives in the eastern edge of Cottonwood Heights understands that you have to put up with a certain amount of gridlock, plan your morning, etc. But we're talking about those who have students who need to get to school that are not able to get out of their neighborhood and get through the gridlock. We're talking about emergency services or those who live on the eastern side of Wasatch Boulevard who have physical impairments where they need regular medical help. And I have a constituent who told me that she can't even get anybody to contract to come to her house in the wintertime because there's a great percentage of the time they can't even get through to get to her house. This problem, I think we've thought it through and in many conversations with the chief and others in the law enforcement side, we've expected residents to go to the traffic light at Bengal Boulevard, but we haven't begun to experience that cars even will clog up the intersection and not yield on the green, or excuse me, on the red lights. And cars are not able to come down Honeycomb and get across. And likewise, those coming back if they've had early morning obligations and they're trying to get back home from, let's say, the southeast or even the southwest Sandy Draper area, or from the west along Fort Union Boulevard or down from the I-215. It's impenetrable. So we, again, with the support of many people that are present in the meeting today, I put together some, detailed descriptions of the challenges. The one I just mentioned, and that appears as number one, where people may be coming from Sandy Draper and they're trying to get home. I know Sandy City has some kind of decal program, and I think we need to explore and see whether our residents can get past. As you may know, Sandy has at 9800 South and Old Wasatch Boulevard, they stop all who want to enter further to the east and send them south on Wasatch Boulevard to line up, but they will, if you have a decal, allow you to come through. And I understand that some Cottonwood Heights residents have been able to be successful at getting that decal. And then the overarching challenge of the intersections. In fact, the map that I put in everybody's appendix shows the many intersections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that are the challenges on these snow mornings along SR 210. And so I know our police chief has indicated that he is working toward being able to obtain additional funds. They may come through the UDOT funding source where the legislature has allotted an amount of money annually to address traffic challenges on snow mornings. And we're hopeful, and please jump in here if I state anything incorrectly, Chief, but my understanding is that he's hopeful to be able to pay some of his officers overtime on those snow mornings in the 25-26 ski season, so that he can have a roving officer in those hours where the gridlock occurs. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, you're not wrong. I mean, that is a problem, getting people to in and out of that area. But only fear and money holding you back. If we don't have the resources to pay them, if those funds are allocated, we would love to dedicate officers, paying them overtime to do exactly what you're describing.
Great. So the purpose in our agenda today is I want to make sure that I have, or find out if I have support from my council colleagues in working with the police department to, you know, address, I know that they have reached out. I've talked to Officer Bess, who's over the traffic unit, and he and other officers have indicated that they have reached out to UDOT to do things like paint on the road, you know, do not block intersections, to use that VMS signage, you know, on those mornings to let motorists know locals must have egress ingress. Apparently they were told, well, if it doesn't have directly to do with the safety of the motorists on the roadway, then UDOT is unwilling to do that. However, I was driving up Big Cottonwood Canyon and they used one of the same VMS signs to say, watch out for mooses. Or like, you know, moose crossing or something. So I guess if it's good enough for the mooses, it's good enough for our residents to ask, you know, for, again, some visual signage to get better cooperation from these motorists that are trying to get up in Little Cottonwood Canyon. That's predominantly.
Are they willing to paint on the road, the do not block?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to think, was it, I'm trying to think if it's.
I know the answer, but I'll let Matt speak to that.
We've talked to them. I'm not getting a lot of progress with them. So I don't know the full answer.
Part of it, it's not as effective during the winter months.
Yeah, winter, you can't see them.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest issues. And it's,
Well, but they could have vertical signage too, that, you know, on snow mornings, do not block intersections. So there's inexpensive things again so I want to make sure we start working on it now so that when we get to the next ski season, we feel that we've ticked every box. I do find it difficult to work with UDOT, as I'm sure I have compassion for our Public Works Director, our Chief of Police. UDOT, in my opinion, is quite siloed. And you find one person and they have this vertical thing they do. It's just a certain project or, you know, I build sign or I, you know, and so to find someone who's really looking at the holistic picture is often difficult. So I do, but you know, it seems to me and again, my constituents who have come forward that there are practical and inexpensive things that could be done to mitigate and alleviate the challenge. Any thoughts or questions?
I'd say, so, you know, one of the things that we worked with UDOT closely on to try to help, we thought, you know, and I think the intent was really, really good, was, hey, if we don't let cars into the canyons that shouldn't be up there without good tread and tires, we'll have fewer you know, slide offs and accidents, which will keep traffic flowing at a better pace. And that actually happened. They had, you know, the statistics that they're still compiling I think are gonna be pretty remarkable at how much of a difference the enforcing traction laws made. The problem that we didn't foresee at the time, for Cottonwood Heights specifically, is, it ended up taking 5 officers for us to implement traction control. And we went into that with UDOT thinking that it was gonna take 2. And so what that did is it took our officers away from trying to keep people from blocking intersections and going into neighborhoods where they shouldn't be, and to helping the flow and to helping people. And so that is on an agenda item in the next couple of weeks with UDOT to discuss. There will be a little bit more funding coming, which we think can maybe help, but we are going to be talking, they know how discouraged we are. So I know Matt just said he's not seen a whole lot of help so far. They know currently that we are really discouraged and need to do things differently this next ski season. So they are committed to looking at things that they haven't looked at and implementing in the past.
Who are you working with specifically?
Director Braceras.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Okay.
and Sandy City's gonna be in the conversation along with the sheriff's office and police chiefs. So, anyway, that, I can't remember if it's, has that been set as an appointment
For early June.
for early June? Yep. So anyway, we're there, we are not going to relax and act as though there's nothing else we can do. We have to figure out more things. You know, we get asked the question all the time, why don't you stack cars on Wasatch like Sandy does going south? UDOT won't let us. If the shoulders aren't wide enough, they go too far out into the street, and they've told us you cannot do that. And so that solution, which has worked really well for Sandy, isn't a solution for us. But we are gonna be adamant that we need help. We have to figure out some things so that we alleviate what's been happening on Wasatch Boulevard.
Councilmember Rowe, with your joining the CWC board, you would get them focused on transportation. Just, that'd be so nice. They would.
Well, I
accelerate.
plan to quote the Mountain Accord. The Mountain Accord is excellent.
It is.
And
I
I
just
plan
think
to quote
they've lost
that
their way
into the
on that.
microphone at every board meeting and hold their feet to the fire to aspire to what appears in that Mountain Accord, which was, I believe, from 2017 or so,
15.
or 15, yeah. So I'm gonna appreciate all the legwork, you know, our mayor has served for 4 years on the CWC board, and so now I'm gonna follow on to, you know, really say, you know, are you drifting away from the tenets that were espoused, and how do we return to the better, you know, focus on transportation? So thank you for bringing that up.
That you'll be on that committee.
Well, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that, and more to come. So this is a super important issue. Okay, item 4 on our agenda are our staff reports. We're gonna start with item A, so UDOT was going to come and decided not to.
Decided they didn't have anything new.
They didn't have anything new. However, the item is titled discussion for the intersection of Fort Union and Wasatch. But Matt, you've got something, I guess, that you want to
Yeah.
share.
Yes, I can. Speaking of UDOT, let me make sure, is UDOT in the room? Because I don't know if they're gonna surprise us or not. We've been we tried to get them here. We've had many discussions with UDOT on the intersection here at Fort Union and Wasatch, namely the northbound side of Wasatch, north of Fort Union on Wasatch. They had money or have money for this intersection to improve bicycle lanes, to do the turn lanes going up the canyon, up Big Cottonwood, going from south to east, and then improving the access going north off of Big Cottonwood Canyon. So they have this whole design, if you will, put together. We've met with them and had some discussions, and the reason they were meeting with us is a couple of things. I'll try to blow the screen up a little bit to to help out. Now, mind you, I am not speaking for UDOT. I'm just telling you what I've been given. Now, they had the opportunity to be here to share their story. So I'm gonna share it for them. So here we go.
Is there any reason why this didn't appear in our appendices so that we could come here prepared
I-
to talk about
You
this?
got backed out, so.
UDOT backed out. It's
So when
not,
did you get this? I mean.
I've had I had this from other meetings. I just brought it tonight because I was asked to give an update on present at
Is this
UDOT.
anything new from the last time that Barbara, or whatever her name is, presented here from UDOT? Is this?
From Becky, Rebecca.
I beg pardon, Rebecca?
It's the same project. There is some
No, I know
minor,
it's the same project.
minor adjustments. The reason UDOT wanted to meet with us is because we met with them and we talked about the future trail right along here. And the size we were looking for, they are talking about the bicycle lane that's been brought up many times here, as a concern for safety because of the way it's striped. We have talked with, and they've gone out and blacked out some of the lines. They appear again. Once again, we call, we try to get some movement out of them. And Councilmember Burrell, I don't disagree that it's tough to get things through with them, but they have their processes and we have to work within them. So we've been working with them on the bicycle lane, but at the end of the day, this project, they have, I forget how much, around 60 million, I think they were allocated for this intersection. With all of the design, all of the changes and everything, and what they're looking at, they've come in 100% on their engineer's estimate over what they have budgeted. So what they have done is they haven't necessarily shelved the project, but they have put it on the back burner for a while. According to Becky, whom I was emailing with last week, they have they are still going through with what UDOT refers to as a plan in hand review, which means they take the 90% project design to their UDOT and go through the whole process. Everybody comments and everything. It's the last step before they're ready to actually go out for bid. They call that their plan in hand process.
So can you help us to understand, like, what I think I'm seeing here is a 6-foot bike lane that will bicyclists come out around into a center area? Is this a slip lane? Can you maybe?
I cannot.
Design isn't done.
I cannot.
These are just.
I'm giving you the update on where they are in their process, not the design. I honestly cannot tell you exactly what it is.
The not being part of. I mean, I'm not saying that the residents of District 4 are the experts in transportation, but many of us travel these roads. And when we are not part of the discussion, we have ended up with really dangerous markings or lack of markings or speeds and other problems, egress, ingress. And as the representative of District 4, I want to be part of this discussion, even if they've decided to put it on the shelf temporarily. I want to see these diagrams and I want to understand where their thinking is going. And you know, that's why I was elected to.
They have presented this at the last time they were here. They presented the project to the council and went through what they were doing. This is what they came to us with as when we were looking at this was, I wanted to bring this up. They asked us about the trail size and what we were looking for. And we mentioned we would like at least a 10-foot with a large buffer to meet the expectations that we have of a little more safety being along Wasatch and more of a buffer when you have people on their bikes or walking, that they're not right on top of the traffic. So we talked to them about that. And in doing so, they have to build a very large wall right along here. I don't have the specifics on it, but a very large wall. And they were talking to us about right-of-way need to build this wall. And these are the sections. And we've had those discussions. And as far as the minute details of the design, I mean, I can talk to you about what I'm seeing on here. There is a bike lane. They have dedicated right turn lane. The bike lane goes down through there. And they would change the lighting the signals so that there are dedicated right turns. So the bicyclists, when they make their turns, they are operating the same as a vehicle would. All of these things are in here, but right now, the project, like I said, is on the back burner. But in the emails and the discussions I've had with them, they realize that the bike lane right now is a big issue, and they are continuing to push forward on making that safer. They haven't given me anything. They haven't talked to me about specifics on it. The line in the email is, we haven't forgotten about the bike lane. We are pushing forward to do that right away, as opposed to doing the whole intersection at this time. So they're peeling off the bike lane as part of a separate design issue while they're working on the funding necessary to do the whole intersection.
Can I ask a clarifying question, please? Because
Yeah.
I may have misheard you. They had budgeted 60 million.
I believe so,
and you're
yes.
Telling me it's 100% over, so they're thinking it's 120 million for an intersection?
Yes, I believe so. And
A
a
lot-
majority of that is this
Cost is the,
wall.
yeah, the
There
south
is a very large wall.
east corner.
To be able to expand the intersection, they'd have to put up a
Yes.
retaining wall, which
Correct.
they've decided to table for now because
So table, I think, is the wrong
Tables,
word.
yeah, like.
They have not tabled this project. They have told us we're stepping back to see if funding is going to be an.
They're looking at other funding options to make this happen, but the plan, they were pushing forward, they were pushing this to bid in the winter this year. Going through the design and their engineer's estimate, from what I'm told, they were 100% or right at 100% over on their engineer's estimate compared to the budget for the project. That's what I said. They're not putting it away. They're putting it in the back burner while they're working on funding on this. But in the interim, they are still working on the bike lane issue that's going through there on the northbound on Wasatch. So they haven't completely gotten rid of it. They're working on ways to push it forward.
Well, one of the ways to make intersections safer, especially in places where Strava reports show us that this is heavily bicycle, is to have the bicycle lanes painted in the intersection. So motorists understand where these bicyclists are going. I don't know what the Strava reports would tell you, how many are going northbound and go up into Big Cotton Canyon. But I believe the vast majority are gonna ride due north, because this is the only avenue. When people say, who are non-bicyclists, and they say, why don't those bicyclists just find a different route? There is not another route. If you want to go north and south in Salt Lake Valley, you must end up through this intersection. Old Wasatch Boulevard and Holiday, wonderful. Wasatch Boulevard and Sandy and Draper, wonderful. But within Cottonwood Heights, where this is controlled by UDOT, it's very heavily used, and this, from what I can tell, remains very unsafe. I was in our city manager's office a month ago, representing a constituent, had brought to my attention that one of the big challenges since this island was built here off the 7-Eleven is that motorists coming down Big Cottonwood Canyon, especially at the end of their ski day, or, and the sun is shining from the west in their eyes, and they want to turn left and go south. They think that if there's no one coming straight here, that they can go ahead and turn left to go southbound. And that there's a real problem now with the slip lane here, that motorists will go ahead, tap their brake here. If it's clear here, they go ahead and make their right-hand turn. When in fact, those that are turning left, west to go south, I mean, there's been a lot of near collisions, which if we had cameras, we could know how many near misses there are. There's also the problem with 7-Eleven's driveway right there. So I was hoping Rebecca would be here to talk about this with UDOT. I've been waiting now for weeks, thinking this was my chance to interact with her. But since she'd like not to be here, what, Shira, do you know, was this brought to their attention this challenge of motorists driving westbound with the sun in their eyes. They think that they have a clear ability to turn left, and then they find, oh, there's someone in the slip lane turning in. Were you able to follow up on that?
Yeah, and we've talked to them about that, about turning out of the sunlight. I mean, it's all just kind of. It's there and they're aware of it.
The island didn't change the original striping. Nothing's changed other than there's a concrete island there now. The striping, the concrete island was built around the striping, so. There's a barrier there now, but I don't know what to do about the other.
It was a stripe, with stripe.
It was
already
striped
there.
prior.
The right-hand turn isn't a slip lane, it's still
It's a right turn lane.
It's a right turn where they have to stop, so it's not a slip
It's
lane where
just-
they can just keep going, right?
Well, but a lot of slip lanes, I got a ticket in a little town and, well, he actually only gave me a warning because I was in one of those lanes that lead you to believe that you can drive without stopping. So whether they tap their brake or not, I think the point is that it's very dangerous right now. And I don't know if the chief can cite actual collisions or if these are near misses, but again, my interest is prevention, prevention, prevention.
Matt, anything else you want to add?
No, I don't, I don't know what to say. It's hard to speak for UDOT.
Yeah.
All I can do is share what I know and that this is where they are in the process. And they are moving forward with the design. They are also in the process of looking for funding, and they are also have assured me that they are not giving up on the bicycle lane question, and that may be a project in and of itself here next year or bidding out. So it's not something that's going away. It's just something that has to be addressed, and they're working on it.
Do you
Great.
think we've been treated differently? I mean, Councilmember Burrell, you just said that, which is true, that Wasatch Boulevard in Sandy is beautiful and safe. And then Old Wasatch Boulevard is also got them. So what's the difference? Why are we?
Well, we have high volume going up into Big Cottonwood Canyon and going
So
on
it's a matter-
south through.
it's a
So
matter
the
of-
sheer volume of cars is greater than it is in either. Those are both one lane in either direction. Old Wasatch Boulevard and Holiday and Sandy.
That's a good point.
But also, I do think that they own those roads and it shows. I am very frustrated that the years and years and years are going by and the safety on SR 210 through Cottonwood Heights is
I agree with you. I
less
live
than-
there. I agree with you.
It's also a matter of when they were developed and under what standards. So
That's also fair.
But I will say from the research I've done that municipalities do have a level of authority when it comes to intersections with a state route. And I urge our council to figure out how we can assert, however, there's money involved. UDOT will make sure that our city pays their fair share of making these intersections safer. So,
Okay,
all right.
well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So item B under staff reports is entitled short-term rental discussion. So I know Councilmember Highland, this is your baby. Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I'm just
first?
here from the internal committee and from a staff perspective to add insight and
Okay,
answer questions. but-
turn it right to Councilmember Highland.
Continue the fun. All right, thank you for the opportunity. The committee has come to a standstill because they'd like some direction from the council about how they'd like us to proceed. They don't want to bring back their recommendations and then, not have it be palatable to the council. So what we are really looking at today and what I'd like to have from the council is to answer the question, where and how many short-term rentals we would want to consider. This is also tough stuff. We're looking at how to combine competing desirable outcomes in short-term rental policy. Housing affordability goes both ways. Actually, housing affordability has come up multiple times. We had the town hall, which was mostly, of course, a specific point of view. But I had lots of emails afterward, more than I had expected, that said, "Oh, I would like to do a short-term rental in my basement because it would help me stay here." With the Canyon School District looking at possibly reducing our schools, housing affordability is important. We also have found out from MC Gardner and from Granicus that there's a level of, or percentage of STRs in a community that community can withstand where prices don't actually increase and don't affect housing affordability. So I'm just gonna put that out there for now and talk about it in a second. You know, we want to consider the long-term character of neighborhoods. That's important. Short-term rentals are often some of the best kept properties because they have to be marketed. There are also those that you can expel unwanted neighbors quickly because we were looking at this compliance software that can help us with that. And we want to welcome a good visitor experience and bring money into our city. So all of these things kind of compete for what we want to consider. But the committee has done a lot of work to look at neighboring cities. And if I were to make a recommendation, I would say that we would look at best practices from Brighton's enforcement. They have successfully used Granicus to bring all of their properties into compliance. We all, other than Councilmember Holton, we were able to meet with Deckard at the ULCT conference. And just quickly from the council, what did you think about that presentation? Were you as convinced as I am that the software is one of the things that would help us greatly in bringing these households into compliance? I'm impressed. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that we're gonna have to have some semblance of software or something has to be there to track where these are located and to manage them. I was wondering about capacity though. Who does that for us as a city? Who keeps track of all that data and those residences, and then the adjudication of violations? Who does that? Is it code enforcement? Is it police officers? Those are the types of things I kept thinking about as they were presenting this to us. Is, you know, it's nice to have that information. I think it's critical to have that information. But I also think about the back end. How are we gonna be able to be supported or support the software? You can have it. Information is great, but what do you do with the information?
Mike, would you speak to that?
Sure.
We had some extensive discussions with Granicus where we actually thought it would be easier for staff for licensing and nuisance tracking and enforcement with this software that I'd like to review.
So I think that question, the real answer to that is based on the policy direction you choose to approach short-term rentals with. If you want to wield a heavy enforcement stick, but not open up the policy at all, that probably does put a burden on the enforcement staff, because we will identify with software a ton of properties that are illegal and hand them all over to chief and his officers to go, enforce. Now, if you have a different policy that allows these on a more widespread basis, the software helps make sure, that wherever they're allowed, they're getting licensed, they're being inspected for safety standards, whatever, if you have parking requirements or things like that, they're going through our system. And if any come in and are operating without a license, then the software identifies them when we say, hey, go get a license. You can keep running this. You just got to do a few things, get a license and carry on. So it's a collaboration between the planning department and the business development staff with the licensing side and the code enforcement side. But the policy really informs how that software is used and the burden it places on staff. But if they're in line, then the software, I do think, makes staff's job a lot easier. And a lot of the softwares can send out letters, can identify, some of them can even identify if properties are owner occupied or not, if that's a direction that the council is interested in going. It can help with license submittals and inspection requests and things like that.
24/7 hotline for violations, way to report.
So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg to me, because I'm not interested in doing anything until we can enforce. And so we either make the decision that but then if that puts too much burden on the police, for me to move forward, I have to know that we can enforce what will eventually be on the books.
Perhaps we didn't have quite enough time, but one of the things that Brighton did in their policy is they gave a grace period for coming into compliance. And that's what Granicus was successfully able to help them do. We had in the webinars that they gave to the committee, they showed us an example in California where they were able to bring all of the properties into compliance just by what they were doing. By identifying the property, by sending out the emails, by taking screenshots of, reviews, showing evidence that, hey, we know you're there and you're not in compliance. And so, Deckard actually, I think that was really good. They identified 4 different kind of customers, just customer profiles. One was the Sally Do Goods. They're the people who really want to be in compliance and will take care of their properties. They just need the direction of what that is. A Clueless Craig, which is the person who's just not informed. And so compliance software helps inform what the policies are. A Busy Bob, which is someone who's just not quite as interested because he's too busy to care. And then the last one was Dodgy Dave. And what they said to us is those first 3, the Sally Do Goods, the Clueless Craigs, and the Busy Bobs, we're going to bring them into compliance. It's going to be that less than 1% Dodgy Dave like we have on Danish Pines Lane, where we're going to have to take a lot of time and resources because they are flaunting and just fraudulently ignoring the rules. And so when I think about enforcement, I think about, okay, what is it that you're going to have to go after? So I 100% agree that enforcement is going to be one of our primary goals. I also think it's going to be, where are we going to expend our resources and how much can the software help us? And I fall back on Brighton that they've been able to bring everybody into compliance. They haven't had any lawsuits. They have a 3 strikes you're out policy, which I would completely embrace. I'm convinced we can do this.
So one of the big concerns I think that we will all have is there a way to allow this in certain areas that will not reduce housing supply? So housing supply, obviously, that's the biggest concern for the state. More short housing, kids don't have places to live, and when supply's down, prices go up, and it puts us kind of where we are now. So owner occupancy is what supposedly helps with that. So I know we've talked about if we did an owner occupancy type ordinance on our arterials and started there, and then did a pilot to say, so, and I have questions. What about a big unit? What about a, like a multi-family type unit that's on an arterial? Would that qualify? Because that obviously wouldn't work with.
Mayor, I want to add
Yes,
to that.
yeah.
I want to thank Council Member Highland for jumping into this. We've had awesome conversations over the weekend, and I really appreciate you taking the time to dive into this and to discuss this with all of us. I think one of my biggest concerns, though it's not a concern of approaching this overall, I think this is the one thing, and this is for my colleagues, Councilmember Highland already talked about this. But on Highland Drive in District 1, you've got a bunch of rentals, you've got a bunch of duplexes. And if we look at those arterials, those would fall under kind of an arterial of within the city. And I just have to make sure, I couldn't feel comfortable of putting a policy forward that would incentivize landlords from removing folks from rentals.
So those would those fall into the non-owner occupied because they're renting, so they wouldn't be considered owner occupied, right?
And so whatever we do, I just have to make sure that I look at every resident in the city and say, whatever we've done, it's not going to displace any of you. And that's just super, super important for me. And if there are going to be those exceptions of, okay, maybe we're going to try to not do owner occupied in these areas, I would have to make sure that it wouldn't incentivize a landlord to then turn it into a short-term rental and not rent to these individuals who have been part of our community. I'm not saying that that's your intent. I just think as we approach this to the committee members, that is something that is super, super important to me, that we make sure that we.
Right, it's the where and how many, and
Yeah.
I want to point out to us as a council, where do we allow them now? Whole home condos and townhouses, and those are some of the most affordable properties that we have as far as starter homes. So we're already contributing to the problem with the current policies that we have.
And I would just even further to Councilman Holton's point, Highland Drive is the only roadway in Cottonwood Heights that has reasonable transit, reasonable bus service. It's every 15 minutes on Highland Drive. So somebody who needs affordable living can both rent a place along Highland Drive that's more affordable and they have bus service. So I think we have to look at, you know, Fort Union Boulevard, it does have bus service every 30 minutes. Most working people will roll their eyes. I don't know if that's really gonna work for me. So we have a lot of things we need to be sensitive to. I totally agree. We don't want to see anybody who's been renting, oh, you're out in 6 months because I have the chance to do twice as much in the wintertime. So this is tricky business, but I, like Matt Holton, really appreciate that you and your committee have been studying this, gathering evidence, conferring with our state representative, Galen Benyon, who's here today. Thank you for being here. She's done a tremendous amount of work in the last couple of years on this subject. And so it's through collaboration and there's a lot of great statistics. You've shared a few. You filled my ear. I think we talked for an hour and a half.
We did today.
You know, so, you know.
Okay,
that's-
so within 20 minutes, so.
She deprived only
I'm just kidding.
45 minutes. for you? No, but it truly, it is gonna really take, because I like council member Highland, I am sensitive to the families who say, oh, I figured out a way to crack my financial nut, be able to meet my mortgage payment. We rent out a couple rooms in the downstairs during the ski season, and that brings us the, you know, the revenue we need to keep our house. So there's a lot of different people on fixed incomes versus other, you know. So how and how many, where and how many?
One other thing, just to add, I went and met with Councilman Shelton, who's from District 1, and I wanted to get some context of things that the council has voted on. Shane, others.
Commissioner Shelton.
Commissioner?
Oh, yeah, it's on our planning board.
That's right, that's right. I apologize.
Not
Sorry.
that displays you from District 1.
But I asked about some history here, and he said that back in the day, even the ADUs were super controversial. And there was actually a proposal to make the ADUs legal, and the city actually took a vote and voted those down to not allow them. But then the state came in and allowed them, obviously statewide. And so I do want to ask the question that we're not going to obviously answer now, but I'll throw this out there, is was there some sort of, when it comes to the income argument, was there some sort of a compromise that was made of, hey, we're going to allow these ADUs, you can rent out a portion of your home, but it is done on a long-term basis. It is maybe not as lucrative, but it at least is allowing you legally, any owner to do this, to bring income that will be able to supplement your income. And so I think we have to balance that with also recognizing, hey, this individual can make more money and maybe even a shorter period of time, which could have a different impact of, you know, maybe it's not all year round, but should that ability to go and gain more income in a more lucrative fashion be to the potential detriment of their neighbors? Is that fair, not fair? I don't know.
It's to the detriment
I don't
of
know.
our neighbors. I think we could debate.
And I
that
think,
too.
I think the answer would be, it depends on the neighbor, right? I think everyone have a different opinion.
Well, actually, there is evidence here statistically in cities that all the short-term rentals that have been licensed,
Yeah.
there's zero nuisance complaints.
Yes.
The nuisance complaints come
Sandy does that
against the
in
ones that are trying to operate under the radar and not go through the proper
I believe
process.
that.
The
So
rich Californians coming here to ski are the renters.
So I would agree that
Not that.
while some percentage of short-term rentals are problematic, is it 1%?
Yeah.
Is it 3%? But to say it's 50% or 80%, I think is misrepresenting short-term rentals. It's not that I would love to see all owner occupied throughout all neighborhoods so we don't lose our elementary schools, things like that. So affordable housing and you
So
know,
do
not.
do you have a specific proposal?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
finish,
Yeah.
because I really do value this input. So I started with Brighton's enforcement. I would look at Sandy's approach to limiting the number of owner occupied. So Sandy only allows owner occupied. And by the way, they do a certain limit per neighborhood. Right now, they allow 294 and they only have 105 in use. So that means there's room in almost all of their neighborhoods to take on some owner
Wait, so
occupancy.
Sandy only has 105 current license
That's what the
and we have 80?
website says.
We have 80,
We have 80?
yeah.
License 101.
Insanity.
We,
So we have more than.
Or start
Sandy.
here.
We have 101
Equal
currently
state.
licensed, legal here.
We have 100, it's gone up
But
to
we-
101.
But we do not allow them in any single family zone. It's very specific location.
And Sandy has how many? Did you say that again?
No,
And on their website, they say that there are 294 allotted
105.
STRs. They have 105 in use and they have 189 licenses available. The other thing that Sandy does is they say a property shall not be rented as an STR for more than 182 nights per year. A property with a valid accessory apartment can be also rented for 365. This is their way of enforcing owner occupied because goes back to enforcement. On the compliance software, you can actually track how many nights a year those are rented. As far as owner occupancy, you can require a Utah state tax return. The owner has to match up with the address. They have to show that they live there. The last thing I wanted to say about that quickly, because I don't want to monopolize the time, so I want the discussion, but we would look at Murray's definitions of owner occupancy and they have conditions, lives on site, parking. So the way I talked to Murray and the way they said is, it was basically a Frankenstein approach. You just grab from all of the successes of the cities around you and what's going to work. So let me go through a couple of other quick things before we take this back to a discussion. I think our goals would be to incentivize compliance over a black market. And if you think we can eliminate all of these and not have a black market, I would challenge you that I think that's a mistake. That compliant, licensed STR, even if we limit it to a number per neighborhood, is a better solution than us ignoring the fact. You saw the presentations, there's up to 500 is what they're predicting in our city. That we would target enforcements towards nuisance properties. We would do our best to enforce owner occupancy. Are you going to 100% enforce owner occupancy? Everybody has to live on site while there's someone there? No, I talked to Brooke DeSosa about that. And she has one right across the street from her. It's supposed to be owner occupied. She knows it's not all the time. It's not a problem to her. She agreed that you go after the nuisance properties. And then the last thing I'd really like to tell the council is, I don't want to do something so big that we can't put it back, we can't scale it back. So what I'd like to talk about is a pilot program with the compliance software in place so that we can dip our toes in the water and see how that's going to work before we expand it to a much broader area. 5 to 6% of available housing as STRs does not affect the price of housing. And I think that's one thing that we could look at, and then we can debate whether or not we allow whole home rentals on the arterials, maybe not on all arterials, maybe on some. We need to get to a point to go back to the committee and say, okay, in these areas, we're going to allow a certain number. They're going to be owner occupied. We're going to take best practices from Sandy. We're going to take the enforcement from Brighton and bring something back to us. Maybe it's in the town center.
Does Sandy have when they say they can have 2 in their area? Does it define what that area is?
The best thing they
We've
can
got
do is just
30 geographic locations in the city's broken into. Each one gets 2 by default and they get 1 per.
So they don't give a proportionately higher number as you get closer to the canyons.
Each one is based, so it's based on the number of residential units within that geographic location.
But I think our challenge is, we know that in D4, there's 75% of the current STRs approximately are in District 4. So do you weight it accordingly to allow for more to owners to come into compliance? That's a question for the council.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. So you see this on Sandy's website, of these different neighborhoods.
It's hard to see. It does look like they kind of do that.
Where's the
It
canyon?
might be based on.
Here they are near the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon here with 30 and 29, and as you move here.
Those aren't the numbers, those are the districts.
That's the.
Oh, that's the district
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
the numbers.
That's
on the
how-
right.
To your point, maybe fewer in your area where there's smaller homes and you want,
Yeah.
but then there's also people who have contacted me from your area saying, please let me do this so that I
Let me
can
ask you a
stay
quick
here.
question. When you shared a statistic earlier, a certain percentage you said doesn't impact the overall home price or housing affordability. Is that still owner occupied? Or are you saying a percentage of non-owner occupied?
It's actually, the Chem Gardner it was non-owner occupied. It says regions with a 5 to 7% STR share experience lower median house prices and incomes. Those areas with 10 to 15% STR share also experience lower median housing prices. So our perception is not borne out in the data. When it gets higher, it says 50%, that's when you see the highest median house price.
So a question that I have is with that, with those percentages that it doesn't impact housing affordability, do they address, obviously it impacts housing availability? Did they talk about that at all in there?
I will go back and look. I don't.
Okay.
I don't-
Affordability has to be based on the small number that exists.
But I mean, if taking
not
them off of
enough.
the market, other than the price of the home, there aren't the homes that are able to be sold, correct? Am I looking at that correctly? Or incorrectly? Does that make
What-
sense?
what's the example you told me today about was it Palm Springs that pulled back the number of STRs and their price of housing went down by 4%? Yep, when they restricted. So it's not as huge as we think. Median percent is 1% is one. From $1 million to $960,000. So that's why I think we can allow some. And not just open up, like Murray did, everywhere you can do hosted sharing. I'm not in favor of that. I do like the Sandy approach. I do like kind of following on their coattails of, they're looking at an ALJ. An ALJ would make things easier. We're not gonna have that right away. So we start with a pilot program and we say, how is this going before we make some. I also wanna just say, we're not gonna get this right the first time out. We're just gonna have to make some difficult decisions about where we're comfortable starting.
One thing that you mentioned was choosing to or not to go after Violet.
Hmm.
That there has to be equity within any program that we put together. That can't be the case. You can't pick and choose one over another.
Well, but we do that with barking dogs. We do that with a number of things. Unless there's a complaint, our enforcement officers don't go out.
There's.
Well,
So
compliance throughout the whole
I think that's
city.
what your point is, that we want to incentivize these owners to participate with a business license. And when in a given neighborhood or whatever, there's nuisance complaints, then we go after that. But to spend a lot of our limited resources, human resources in code enforcement, until we have the monies to do that, to say that anybody who isn't compliant, we're gonna, I think that's unrealistic. Maybe that's phased in.
Supposed to show us those that are. not.
Yeah, but to go after, I mean, a letter could go out. I mean, I'm not
Yes,
opposed to
letter will-
letters being auto-generated.
Right.
But if it takes staff from code enforcement to go after a given property that isn't, we're not getting complaints. I mean, I'm all for equity, but we have to be realistic what's enforceable. I mean, I'm with the mayor. I don't want to advance something that we simply don't have the resources to enforce.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Code
But why am I
enforcement
gonna,
all over
why am I
the
gonna
city.
penalize my neighbor on this side, but I won't penalize this person doing the same
Because-
thing on this side?
Well, because the one neighbor is not controlling the parking, the noise.
I think to his point though, right, if you're not compliant, you're not compliant,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And there's some of those nuances there that, yeah. I think he's wanting
would
it to
echo
be
what
fair.
Dan Mills has said, you drive down any street in Cotton Heights and you will see compliance violations everywhere. And so it does become what gets reported, what gets pursued.
Well, that's how you get a
And-
lawsuit. If my neighbor is not being prosecuted for what I am being prosecuted for, there's gonna be litigation.
I think we might be talking past each other a little bit. The compliance software will go after every single violation.
Exactly.
And the amount of resources that we have to be able to enforce every single one 100% may be constrained because of availability.
I think the point is to not have the bias in the system
Exactly.
is important.
Yeah.
That's key.
Is there any evidence? Do we have any evidence of lawsuits or this sort of thing that you're describing?
Doesn't have to be like today, it could be tomorrow. I mean, I don't wanna be the first.
Well, but I think it's reasonable if there's not a precedent that we may be fretting over something that is a kind of a non,
There's always a first.
Yeah.
okay, well, that's.
No, I-
Lawsuits,
that's
I don't know. Anecdotally, though, someone will come in and say, hey, you know, I got busted, my shed's in the wrong spot. What about all these, you know, there's 5 properties on my street, and our answer is always, well, turn them in if you want, and, you know, or refer it to code enforcement and have them go check it out.
Well, you know, to maybe you're sparking me to say this, I want to see us be very careful if we are going to go to the expense of using general fund monies to purchase some kind of software program. I really want it to be something that serves us with more data than strictly STR information, like Granicus, systems that can help us with processes that not only help the staff, but certainly the legislators. You know, and I'm not going to take a lot of time in this meeting to elaborate, but if we're going to buy software for the city, I want it to serve more than just the purpose of collecting STR data.
Oh, it would be a lot more than that, and it would be paid for by licensing fees, so it would be a revenue neutral.
See, I like that.
So I know you're trying to get direction, and I think what might better the process is you coming with some recommendations from the committee and defending why you're making that recommendation, and then I think with that specificity, we can say yes or no. Or and if that's a no, then let's look at solution B or C. And is that
They said basement apartments with owner occupant should be allowed, but limiting the number of licenses is one recommendation. And they wanted to talk about owner whole home rentals along arterials, not maybe all arterials. I have said multiple times, think about the Cannon Mortuary situation where they have a duplex on their property. So it's a commercial property with a residential element. That seems like it should be a place where we could allow an STR. So do you have an appetite at all for owner occupancy? And with limiting the number of licenses in our single family zones? That would be the first question.
I don't think I'd be comfortable starting there. I think I'd be comfortable starting with that premise on arterials.
Well, if you want me to weigh in, I'm not really in that camp. I do not want to see this focused on arterials because again, those that need affordable housing, you know, need to live on or near arterials. And so I do not want these arterial areas that have our limited transit available to be bought up by hedge funders or whomever.
The owner occupancy is going to not allow renters to lose their, to be
Oh,
displaced.
so you want it based on owner occupancy?
On arterial, that's, I
would
think
there
a
be?
place I would be comfortable starting.
How many would there be? There probably wouldn't be 3.
Eastern Fort Union probably is the,
Eastern Florida.
I mean, that's probably the predominant area where you have owner occupancy along an arterial. Highland Drive isn't a ton of that.
But I really need us to wrestle with this. We are allowing whole home rentals in our most affordable housing units right now. And that doesn't seem to be when we're talking about policy decision, we want those to be available for either rent, long-term, or for owner occupancy. And we do need to allow some STRs because if we don't, we'll continue to have a black market. Look at what's happening in our city. This is not comfortable for me. I'm not excited about taking this on. I just need to eliminate the black market and capture tax revenue, know where these are, address the nuisances, and really recognize that we are a resort city. We can have some allowance for these things without destroying the character of our city. In my opinion.
Well, and of those residents that have contacted us, either all of us collectively or me individually, they don't live on arterials, but they've indicated that it's very important to them to be able to do these short-term rentals. So that's where it's tugging on me to
require off-street parking. We can have, certain requirements that they have to meet to be able to do this. We can limit the number by neighborhood. I think you're dying to say something.
No.
Okay.
From well, now that you queued me up, from an administration standpoint.
Mike, I'm gonna start using that.
Here,
I think I'm gonna start using that in the future. I think you're.
No, it's a policy direction, first of all, but if you were to expand it, there are protective measures you can put in place that get at the impact of the use rather than the philosophy of the use itself. And that's off-street parking, that's owner occupancy mechanisms, not perfect, but there's a precedent. Our ADU ordinance does this today. You know, you're limiting secondary utility meters and things like that, so you're not, you know, it's not as easy to exploit loopholes. If you limit it to, you know, arterials or very specific areas, I think you're still gonna see the non-compliance issue and that, you know, that may be okay. So I think, and then I think, is it Mill Creek that has a proximity? If you license one in one place, then you can't have another one within 400 feet.
They can.
I don't love that. It's a little arbitrary. So if you wanted to limit it, I think two good ways to do that would be you know, you adopt an ordinance and you let it run for a certain amount of time, and you continually assess it. And if you want to revoke it, then, you know, whatever's licensed under that pilot program gets to stay. Everything else, you know, you close the door on. And then the last thing is, I do think the neighborhood approach, you have a maximum amount per district or neighborhood, you know, it is a fair way to control, hopefully, the overall impact.
Well, and maybe what's happened in Sandy demonstrates that we're not gonna suddenly have a crush of 1,000 applicants. I mean, Sandy has had their program. I remember when I researched it 3 years ago. It's like the same policy, and they still only have, out of 294 allotted, only 105 licenses. So I don't think we're gonna just suddenly have, you know, I think that we can control it, reassess it, tweak it, remove it.
So Mike and or Shane, if we were to implement something, is there anything that would stop us from saying it's not working, we're going to do away with it?
You can revoke an ordinance. It's just if anyone comes in and legally licenses themselves in that window that it's open,
Can't take.
they
it
can
away.
continue to renew. They become grandfathered in.
We have to grandfather what we already have.
We have a handful, yeah, probably 10 to 12 units in the city that are grandfathered from Salt Lake County. You know, some on Fort Union and some on Bengal and kind of random areas that wouldn't be allowed today, but they've renewed ever since, you know, we've been a city, and, you know, they're allowed to continue to do that.
And another thing Sandy does, a maximum renter occupancy cannot be more than 8 related people or 4 unrelated. The property shall not be rented out more than one renter at any given time, and the owner shall not divide and rent out portions of the dwelling to multiple renters at the same time. All of these things can be tracked with the compliance software. They even told us that we could publish all of the addresses on our website if we wanted to, of the STRs in our city, so we would know where they are. I wasn't very excited about this until the compliance software. They've been doing this a long time. They've addressed it with a lot of municipalities. And I said, just in jest, it can make all of our dreams come true. Well, it can make most of our dreams come true as far as enforcement and compliance. We just have to know that just like all of our ordinances in the city, they're not 100% enforced 100% of the time because of the constraints of resources.
Did you see the country of Spain revoked all of Airbnb listings?
They're gonna do that, and yeah, I would know Barcelona was gonna do that, and
65,000 listings were required from Airbnb to be taken down.
And I guess as we look at this, one of the questions that I'd be curious, you know, down in St. George, some of these other areas, they're cracking down on short-term rentals, and I'm curious, as we're looking to those municipalities where they're working, when they're opening it up, I'd be curious just to see how that has gone when they've become more stringent, and if that's worked or hasn't worked. Because they are becoming more stringent down in Washington County, and I'm just curious if that's proven out to work or not.
Well, I will say one thing, because my son. Oh, do you have a comment on that, Representative Benyon? I will say anecdotally that my son has bought 2 different investment properties to do short-term rentals in Washington County. And what they've done really well in those little towns is that they have zoned and encouraged builders to build complexes that are dedicated to short-term rentals. So they've had so much greenfield opportunity that I don't think it's as threatening to the lower income housing, because they have so much green space that the short-term rentals have been ushered. Both the two ones, one in I can't remember the little town, but another one's in Hurricane. And again, they're, you know, new within the last, 10 years, and they're zoned and specifically for short-term rentals. So I think that's one of the ways that they're having success, is they're real deliberate with their building zoning. We don't have that luxury here.
Let me make a suggestion. 20 minutes is, so we spent hours doing this with the committee. Could we continue, could we put this on the agenda again in one or two sessions and talk about it? You have a chance to kind of look at it, think about the compliance part, the enforcement, do a little bit more research. I'll feed you some more information and then we can make some recommendations.
Works.
I'm good with that.
I'm amenable to that. Well, I'm glad I only took 10 minutes because you took 35 minutes. I mean that
Give it to you
in
next.
the best way. It was important.
Okay, item C under staff reports is a discussion of a requested general plan amendment and rezone. 3526 East Fort Union Boulevard. So let me just. Before I go to you, Mike, you're gonna set it for us, right? So
Yeah.
this item came to the council 2.5 years ago.
2022, I think, yeah.
In 2022. And so just to give you some background, and Councilmember Holton just walked out, of course, because he's one of the ones that I wanted to hear this. Anyway, so
I can bring it back in.
we anyway, so there's about an acre lot on Fort Union Boulevard. And we had an applicant come in and ask if they could split the lot into thirds and then build twin homes on those lots. And we had a lot of feedback from our residents, even though that there's a twin home that's not too far away, a single twin home. That the character of the neighborhood was really important for them to maintain, single family homes. And so the council made the decision at the time that we were going to, I think, there was 80, 90, signatures of residents that lived nearby that supported that. And so we made the decision to not allow the change in the zone. And now it's back. And I'm not sure why, but Mike's gonna tell us why. Did I set that?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Well,
So, and you actually, the council at the time denied two slightly different applications. I'll run through real quick. But no, that was good setup. It's about an acre property, 3526 Fort Union Boulevard. It's right, I don't know if they're still there, right where Metro Water had the road closed before, so you couldn't even see it.
Right.
It's the same applicant as it was in 2022, making one of the same requests that he made back then.
Remind me, what was the other one?
It was rezone, so the general plan land use designation right now is residential office that's in place. And it was a zone change from R18 to residential office.
Okay.
That was, I think, I don't know, that might have been the second application to come in.
Okay.
Both of them, they came in right,
And both were
back to
denied.
back, both were denied.
Okay.
About 1 acre, the applicant actually, let me just continue through this. So the current proposal, and the reason this is back is because any property owner can make an application. You have to wait, I think 1 year after this type of application is considered and denied before you can resubmit the same application. So he met that threshold and has the right to apply. This is a general plan land use map amendment and a zone map amendment. The land use map is it's a more of a policy document that projects out the long range use of various areas in the city. Every parcel in the city has a land use designation, but land use designations are more general than zoning designations. And then the zoning is it's the ordinance, it's the law that applies on the land today that dictates use and development standards and that kind of thing. I do want to note when staff looks at these, we look at it from that policy standpoint, looking at the master plan and looking at the potential impacts and benefits and the trade-offs. So that's where staff recommendations come from in these types of applications. So this is the request for the land use side of things. The current land use designation on the property, it's outlined in red, is residential office. So right now the zoning on the property today doesn't comply with the underlying land use designation. But the applicant is proposing to modify that residential office designation. Residential office allows single family, multifamily, and some it's a neighborhood scale commercial type uses, medical buildings, professional buildings, things like that. They are proposing to amend that land use designation to residential medium density. Which to the mayor's point does match the properties directly to the east. There are two twin homes on a flag lot there that were built in the late 70s, I believe. And then another property that I don't think is built with a twin home today, but has a land use designation that way. And you can see
It's a
if,
single family home with an ADU.
The one that's adjacent to the street there?
It's on the west side of the property.
oh no, not that one. I'm talking to the east where there's land use designation today of media. You're talking about this.
But I'm talking about this home here is a single family, and
Yep.
in Mr. Nash's letter, he indicated that was a twin home, and it's not a twin home, it's
Okay.
a single family.
This is the zoning request. Again, R18 today, proposing R28. So you can see that twin home, where the twin home development is a non-conforming zoning situation right now, built with twin homes but zoned single family. The mixed use with zoning conditions to the west is the gear room. Everything else is zoned single family today, and then across the street is public facility.
Where's the gear room?
It's that purple property, yep. So this is just a summary of the proposed land use and the proposed zone. Residential medium density corresponds to 6 to 10 units per acre, typically containing townhouse and condominium type developments, as well as higher density single family dwelling neighborhoods. Our R16 zone is a single family zone, but one lot every 6,000 square feet is right on the edge of low to medium density in the way it's defined in our general plan. And then most conventionally is the two family dwellings, twin homes, duplexes, that kind of thing. Most commonly is associated with the medium density land use. And then the R28 zone, the applicant's intent on this property is to construct 3 twin homes. That R28 zone allows for single and two family structures. And then the development standards here, they're comparable, very similar to R18, with the big difference being you can build one structure every 8,000 square feet, but that structure could house 2 residential units instead of 1. The same minimum lot size, 8,000 square feet, 5 feet less in the minimum lot width. The R18 is 70 feet of minimum lot width, R2 is 65 feet. Same building height, same front and rear setbacks, slightly less side yard setback requirements. The cumulative side yard in R18 is 20 feet. Neither side goes less than 8. In R28, it's 15 feet. Neither side goes less than 5. So 5 foot difference in minimum side setbacks. This is some background. This was from 2005 to 2019. It's kind of hard to see, but anything outlined in blue here, most of the properties along Fort Union east of 2700 East had a long range land use designation of mixed use, which allows for pretty high intense, commercial mixed use type development. The council in 2019 initiated a land use map amendment, so a general plan amendment for the land use in this area, and amended the land use designation to what is shown on the screen there. So anything that doesn't, or that interfaces with an interior road was changed to low density residential. Some properties were changed to a residential office designation. That's kind of the maroon color. Those were mainly properties that fronted specifically on and off of Fort Union Boulevard and had no direct interaction with the neighboring side streets. And then some of those properties were amended to a residential medium density land use designation, mainly to reflect the built development pattern that's been out there. So that change took place in 2019. And then this applicant in 2022 came forward to the council with 2 different requests. First, to rezone to RO, which is what the underlying land use is, residential office. He still only wanted to do the twin home development and actually proposed to impose, zoning conditions on his property that restricted some of the commercial uses there. But that was denied by the council. The planning commission and staff recommended approval. And then the land use, subsequently the land use map and zone map amendment that's identical to what's in front of you now. Again, supported by staff and commission, but denied by the city council. Current entitlement on this property after those denials, He went forward and platted out a 3-lot, single-family subdivision. So 3 lots there, all fronting on Fort Union Boulevard, standard R18 subdivision there. He did a subdivision plat on that and got it all the way to the end of the process. So if you wanted to move forward with R18 lots, he could go record that subdivision today and create those lots. Actually built some of the frontage improvements. So there's sidewalk, curb and gutter and sidewalk along this stretch of property where there wasn't before. Cleaned up the property and demolished some of the old structures that were there. But again, that
Is there
final
an
plat.
explanation of why he didn't proceed?
In his narrative, yeah, it was in the packet. I think he attributed it to the market and the cost of single family homes versus twin homes and felt the 2-family designation created a more viable product for him. I will say just, the rezone level, this level of decision on this property, you don't necessarily get into the design and how the property can be platted out. We have to look at this as, hey, if the rezone's approved, what can happen in the R28 zone? It is not drastically different than what you see here because of the lot configuration and the frontage requirements. It's too small to do a PUD and do, cluster development and anything like that. So regardless of R18 and R28, the development pattern is probably going to look pretty comparable to this with, 3 lots kind of side by side with 3 structures on them. The question then becomes, is it single family structures or 2-family structures? This, and I've got a caveat on it, this is the concept plan that the applicant submitted. We typically cannot hold applicants to this at this level because if a rezone gets approved, they're entitled to whatever is allowed in that underlying zoning. That being said, he has provided some information, so we've chosen to show that here just as a concept of what he's thinking. He is proposing to acquire and upgrade part of this eastern private driveway that accesses the twin homes, and then build a rear access shared driveway off of that internal driveway. So the 3 twin home structures would front on Fort Union, but the vehicles would park in the rear. Again, that is his concept plan. He could come in and build, compliant 2-family dwellings that all have driveways onto Fort Union, as long as that met our zoning standards, which is the right he has today, just with single family homes.
You said you'd have to acquire it or?
Yeah, so this eastern driveway is not part of his property. He has stated in email, I don't have confirmation of this, that he would purchase part of that driveway and then allow an easement for continued use by the other people that use it. Bring it up to access standards and then use that to access the 3 twin homes.
So these would be like the 23 in view. They've got that back
well,
kind of, is that similar?
From an
to-
entry standpoint, yes, but those are big, long connected buildings. These would be
Oh, that's
3
right.
separate
They
8,000
are
square foot
connected.
structures.
Okay.
A much more conventionally residential development pattern, but with rear entry.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes
Rear
sense.
parking.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Again, can't hold him to this. If he proposed 3 driveways on Fort Union that met, setback and spacing standards, that would be allowed by code as well.
Well, since this is my district and I have talked to innumerable people about this, and I've experienced what the dissatisfaction that has gone on with other projects that have been built in District 4 over the last, let's just say, 8 years. I think it's incumbent upon the council to look at the fact that we need to either look for a process whereby these developers who come and give these kind of plans, which have things that appear beneficial to the community, but they are not in any kind of agreement. And as Mike Johnson just stated, they are able to, once they get the approval, say, oh, well, in the ordinance, it gives me all these things and I thought I could do that, but now I can't do that. Or, so I understand from the conversation with our economic development director that the council has the purvey to say that we will be willing to take the planning commission's approved plan, but that our requirement is that there's a development agreement whereby the pledges made by the developer, the pledges for there to be the rear garages he also made a pledge that he would make a large setback here on the west edge and make the setback tighter. So in essence, pull all this over so that there would be more space between the 35-foot roof and wall to the single family resident. Because this is the only S1 house that abuts this property that would, be likely to suffer. So if he is willing to enter into a development agreement with the city, that he guarantees that the building elements that he has put in his illustration, that he will execute those, then I could be amenable to letting this advance. But we already have had a lot of challenges related to the Dover Hills process, G. Verny and others, Canyon Center. And I would like to explore how can we avoid that through a development agreement that again holds the developer to the pledges made at the time that it was approved with the planning commission and ultimately the council.
Has anything changed, Mike, from the previous submission?
The development concept is different. I mean, it's the same. I will say one thing has changed, and now we allow by right per the state code ADUs in any single family zone. So 3 single family homes built on that property today, if they're owner occupied, could each have an ADU within them. That wasn't allowed at the time. Maximum impact, it's different. It's not a guarantee that each of the 3 would operate an ADU. There's a lot of theoreticals here, but the maximum impact, you could see 6 families with an R28 zone. You could see 6 families with 3 single family homes that each have ADUs as well.
So what are you looking for from
This, we're just introducing this to you, and this has gone through planning commission. You've got the whole packet that show the staff findings and recommendations. It's a recommendation of approval. The planning commission unanimously recommended approval of this. So the next step in this process is for it to come to the city council. Given the kind of complicated backstory, we brought it to the work session today just to introduce it to you, get you thinking on it, and we'll bring it back at a subsequent meeting. If there is interest in pursuing some sort of development agreement, we would need to get some parameters and involve the applicant in that to see if they're even willing to pursue that.
These could be an STR, right? Because of the
No,
private
because they,
lane?
no, because they still front on Fort Union, even though they're not accessed on Fort Union, their address would be Fort Union Boulevard.
And why in general would we want to incentivize more residential along on arterial? Why wouldn't we consider mixed use or, neighborhood commercial or
We
something?
talked about that a little bit the last time and made the determination that 30th East, east of 30th East had a more residential feel, than what we were looking to do further west. So that, if I remember right, that was the determination.
Yeah, I mean, the land use policy supports, neighborhood scale commercial there right now, but
Yeah, we need it.
Neighborhood
We
commercial?
need residences for.
Oh, yes. I
For
mean, if-
people.
Well, I agree. It's their twin homes and
Yeah.
to your point, we can't guarantee they're gonna be owner occupied. And they may be twin homes that then just turn into what 23 views is, which is gonna be rentals,
Be able to track that.
not long-term rentals.
yeah, and it's the same.
For
It's
short-term rentals.
It's the same dilemma.
more common for multifamily to be rented out.
About the no parking on the south side of the road. I had a resident point out that right now, part of the curbing in that area is no parking on Fort Union Boulevard, and they brought up the point that if a guest were visiting to one of these townhomes, twin homes,
Mhm.
they might park on the north side of Fort Union Boulevard and then jaywalk through a place that we now know, according to our traffic study, the cars are averaging 45 miles an hour through there.
Do it all the time.
We-
Your room.
I mean,
Yeah, the beer room.
Yes.
public parking in public areas, illegal use of public parking in public areas is, that's always a perpetual enforcement challenge. When we look at parking requirements for single family, the fraction is different, but for single family versus multifamily, it's approximately 2 stalls per unit. So that'd be, 2 stalls per single family home. That would be, 4 stalls per twin home because they would have 2 units in it. And then if there's an ADU in a single family home, that's extra parking. So that's how we administer that.
Well, good. Thank you
So-
for bringing that.
So this
to
will
us
come back.
again, And we'll, sounds like we'll see it again. Yeah. Okay, the last item under staff reports is fiscal year 26 proposed budget discussion. So we're gonna turn sometime over to our finance director, Scott Jurgis. I've got 3, 4, 5 minutes that I want to take as well. That's Scott.
Yeah, I don't have really anything new other than I need to, well, I've noted the amount of the changes from that were discussed in the last city council meeting. I have not updated pages 2 through the end as yet. I will do that as we prepare for our next city council meeting so that they're all updated. With the document that was sent out, excuse me, another thing that will impact that is the upcoming bond sale related to the $20 million of general obligation bond. That is scheduled to be sold on Thursday this week. And then that in essence locks in our price at that point in time, and then the funds become available on June 4th. But between Thursday and June 4th, we would be able to know our debt service number and incorporate that into the document as well, with the corresponding property tax that would go with that and everything, so that we would know those numbers and everything. We won't have our final property tax dollar amount and or rate until about June 10th. It might be there as soon as June 8th, but sometimes they've been a day or so late in the last couple of years. So we're looking around June 10th that we would have our final certified property tax and our final property tax dollar amount that we can budget. And so we're looking at a couple of changes coming in the next couple of weeks related to some of those items. But that's kind of where it sits at this point in time. I don't know if there are specific questions that anybody had that I could maybe help to answer or anything along those lines.
Any questions from the council?
Well, I do have a question in regard to compensation. It's been brought to my attention just this afternoon that an essential staff within our police department indicates that the medical in lieu benefit has been canceled out by $100 per month. So $100 monthly reduction in medical in lieu benefit severely cuts into her otherwise 3% increase. And I'm wondering, Chief, if you could help me to understand what she's referring, and do most of your officers, I was under the impression that they have a STEP program that looks after their.
It's actually staff wide, so it's civilians and sworn, but I can address that in
Yeah,
my
please.
comments,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I'll get to that.
Okay.
So yet, anything else for Scott before? So, I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about, we've had some consternation and some concern from staff about changes to compensation. And so I first wanted to start with, as a council, we understand anytime that there's a change to compensation that people are not happy. And especially if it doesn't go the way that maybe they would hope that it would be going. So I wanted to explain in more detail why we are here today and how that happened. Councilmember Burrell, Councilmember Newell, and myself have passed 3 budgets. Councilmember Holton, because he was appointed, has passed 2 budgets. Councilmember Highland has passed 1. So this will be our 4th, your 3rd, and your 2nd. In these past three budget cycles, budget 23, budget 24, and fiscal year 25. The council has increased staff pay above their current pay $2.1 million over that 3-year period. When you compound those increases, so above and beyond what they made after the 22 budget cycle, that compounds $4.6 million in increased pay for those 100 employees. And I think we said at 97, it's gone from 95 to maybe over 100 at times. In the 26 budget cycle that we're talking about currently, we have budgeted $400,000 more in staff increases to pay from where they currently sit today. When you compound those increases from budget cycle 23, 24, 25, and include what we're proposing for budget cycle 26, that is an increase to staff pay of $7.1 million. Now, I could go around the room if I wanted and ask if you think that sounds like it's sustainable. When Councilmember Burrell and Councilmember Newell and I came on to became elected all at the same time, we had two existing council members who had voted in previous cycles. So we came into a system where a city manager had implemented compensation. So as one of the things that happened that precipitated what I just talked about was an unprecedented inflationary environment. We went through inflation that hadn't been experienced in over 40 years. I actually remember that 70s. It tells you how old I am. I remember the gas lines that people were in, but that was the previous time, 40 years, that we'd experienced anything like we'd experienced.
13% mortgage rates.
13% mortgage rates. I am extremely proud as a mayor and as a complete council that we made efforts to make sure that our employees for the city did not fall behind due to inflation. And we did. We implemented COLAs that had never been implemented in our city's history. We made sure that the extreme inflation that everybody was experiencing, that they were not going to be hurt financially. We kept the step and the merit and the market increases that had been happening previously as well, so that people that were doing a good job were still getting increases to their pay from what they had expected as well. But what happened is that now we have taken $7.1 million in what will be a 4 budget cycle and added that to our bottom line, which has put us, along with other cities, in a situation where our budget obviously is hurting, and we've had Scott talk to us about that during this budget cycle. So one of the things that we did as a council is we gave our city manager a really, really hard job. So when we hired him, and knowing the financial situation that we were in, we tasked him with comparing to making sure that we weren't doing things differently than other cities were. And one of the things that we found out is we were doing things that other cities were not doing. For example, every police department that we compared in Salt Lake County is on a STEP program. So they all get their COLA every single year, and they also are on a STEP program. One of the reasons for that exists is because the difficulty to hire police officers. It's an industry that demeaned police officers for a period of time, And, you know, we had cities within our county that were down 100+ officers in one single jurisdiction. Nobody wanted to be a cop. People hate people. So anyway, so that's one reason that STEP program exists, because it's a difficult place to hire people. What we did find is that there are only 2 other cities in the county that have a similar STEP program that we had. As a matter of a fact, over half of the cities that we compared to, over half, only had one single metric that they increased pay from. They either had COLA or they had merit. They didn't have both. Over half of the jurisdictions or municipalities that we compared ourselves to. So we were not doing things when we did our last comparative just to our 25 fiscal year 25 budget cycle. We increased our employees' pay through COLA, the STEP system, and market more than any other city in our comparison. So that's the place that we found ourselves in. And we asked our city manager to make the difficult decision, because when I set the table, we understand the difficulty when changes happen to pay. Our options included making no changes at all. And that would precipitate within the next year a doubling to even more of our property tax mill rate. Okay, so and that's what some other cities have done. You know, there are some other cities that I don't think have been very responsible that have a property tax mill rate double what Cottonwood Heights has. So we could go to our residents and say, hey, we are in an environment where we have a compensation structure for our staff that exists, that if we don't make any changes, we're going to have to make drastic changes to our property tax mill rate. We decided that we didn't want to do that. And instead we wanted to look at ways that we could slow the increases that we've been seeing. So we looked at whether we should just have one metric, COLA or merit system, to increase pay. Our city manager came back to us and said he would still like to keep both. And so we determined as a wages and compensation committee and finance committee that we wanted to adhere to that recommendation and keep both, to allow the city in times of plenty to reward our staff in a better way when we can, and have the discretion to lower it when we can't. And the recommendation also came from our city manager to align ourselves with other cities that are not doing a STEP program. And so that is how we got here to where we are today. I want to open it up to the council we obviously have staff here today, and we know that it's a touchy subject for a lot of people, but I want you to be able to express your opinion or add anything you want. I know I'm going to add one other thing before I do it to staff. One of the things that I was, to be honest with you, really, really discouraged with the narrative that has come in the last month has to do with the sister city relationship that the council prioritized in 2 retreats ago. And I want to be as direct as possible with letting our staff know how valued they are to us and how highly we respect them. But it's an elected official's job to prioritize a city's priorities. It is not staff's job. Staff's job is to implement a city council's priorities. And to put out a narrative that that's their decision and not ours, is not right. And I wanted to make that as clear as possible, in this meeting as well.
Well, that's why I think we have elections. People can
Exactly.
look at the decisions we make and say, I'm gonna reelect you, I'm reelecting, I'm gonna, I'm not reelecting her, whatever. I mean, I support you in that manner but no, I think it's also freedom of speech, and I commend also people coming forward and sharing their angst and complaints. Much better that than a riot in the street. I want to hear, I want to learn, I think none of us know it all. And it's through collaboration and empathy for, so I appreciate all the research you did and the numbers, and it does show that the city has put a tremendous amount of our budget behind increases for staff, both civilian and non-civilian. And, I don't think you're opening it up to a discussion of property tax and mill rate, but if I knew 3 years ago what I know now, I would have gone for an annual 3% increase to that mill rate. I'm just gonna go on the record. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, but, I think, inflation is leaping ahead, and for us to hold a mill rate when our expenditures are up, is not realistic, and I know I'm gonna be in favor. I can't change it for this year, but increasing our property tax by 3% a year is what I favor.
The compensation committee meetings that we have with Councilwoman Highland and I and staff, those are obviously closed meetings where we're talking about the best way to compensate our people. And, I think it's important that those meetings are able to be closed sessions where we can have those frank conversations. But at the same time, I also wish that everyone was able to view those meetings as well. There was, the sausage making isn't pretty, and there was a lot of back and forth. Councilmember Highland and I had so many evening discussions, and we wanted to balance, honest to goodness, we wanted to balance because we know that everyone in the city is taking care of their own, just as we're taking care of our own, and it's super important that they can do that. And we tried to look at ways, and to give credit to Jared, tried to look at ways of adding value to try to bring the health to our budget, and be responsible to our residents, but also provide other additional ways that we can provide value. And I don't need to go through all those details. That sounds like our staff has obviously rolled out PowerPoints and other things with staff to try to explain ways in which we can show that gratitude and help you feel valued here in the city. We did, and Mayor, I apologize if I'm giving too much information, but we had conversations of wondering if we could even do 3. There were discussions, and we collectively decided that we wanted to do more. And I think how that breakdown came out to be, it is a difficult decision. And, it was hard because we felt, I think that day we felt like, hey, we were going to do less and we did more. And we felt like we wanted to go to bat for folks, and we did a little more. And so it was obviously tough to hear the disappointment when we wanted to do a little more, when again, we had planned to maybe not even go that high. It is really, really difficult trying to balance all these things. And I just want everyone to know there's no ill intent of any kind, shape, or form. If anything, those hard discussions going back and forth are us saying, I think they'll value this. And another member saying, no, I actually think they'll value this more. And again, the sausage making isn't perfect, and we sure try our best.
I said that I would mention why the reduction in so one of the things that came to our attention was that for those that don't have health insurance, don't get health insurance, the city was paying them a certain amount because they weren't on our system. As we did the comparison with other cities, there wasn't anybody that was paying the amount of money that we were paying. And so, like I said,
Not even close.
not even close. And so that number brought us into a line with what the highest other cities, any other cities were doing, with multiple not doing anything.
Yeah, and it's tough because we'll have discussions, and we did in that compensation committee saying, hey, cities do X, we need to be more competitive, we need to do what other cities do. And so when we try to align what other cities are doing, that does mean that there's gonna be some changes to match what other cities are doing. So to equal that out, sometimes there's some pain in that adjustment, and it is a tough thing to do.
It's a heart-wrenching place to be in when we have to be responsible to the taxpayers of our city, which is our primary responsibility, and how important our staff is to us. I'd say that even personally, how much I value them. The CPI right now is at 2.3%. There were years in our history where even at 2% inflation, there were no increases. And so to Councilmember Holton's point, we thought that 3% was actually taking care of our employees this particular year, because we did last year step up to the plate and gave a much higher increase because of the incredible inflation that we had the year before. So we pay attention to all of these things, and I just would like our staff to know that we don't take this flippantly or lightly. We really were trying to come up with some conciliatory measures so that even we could soften the blow of just a 3% increase. Would I love to make it more? Yes. But the current economic conditions just won't allow us to do this. And I think we're being generous, even being over right now, the current CPI.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate you all adding on to that. So item 5 on our agenda is a review of calendars and upcoming events. On Wednesday, May 21st, from 1:30 to 2:30 is our senior social. That's tomorrow?
That's tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow, and that's here at City Hall. On Friday, June 6th, from 9 to 12, we'll have a free community shredding at City Hall. On Saturday, June 7th, from 9 to noon, we'll have a Utah Recycling Alliance event at Hillside Plaza. On Wednesday, June 11th, from 1:30 to 2:30 will be another senior social at City Hall. What's that?
That's the Q&A with the council and mayor.
On the 11th? Okay.
Okay, I have that in my calendar.
Yeah, the suicide prevention training at City Hall. And then Saturday, July 5th at 6 p.m., a Korean delegation dinner and friendship agreement at City Hall that I'm really looking forward to. And then Thursday, July 24th through Saturday, July 26th, our Butler Real Day celebration that we're looking forward to. So we do not have anything to discuss in a closed meeting. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn our work session.